Welcome, Dr. Michelle Zhou, to the Empathy Edge podcast, here to talk about all things empathy and AI, which I know is very top of mind for a lot of people these days. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maria, for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to this work of working on AI and finding ways to work with it so that we don't lose our human connection and the human elements that make those interactions with each other so important.
Thank you for asking this question. So my area of expertise has always been in interdisciplinary area. It's known as human-centered AI. So the idea is to actually gain a deeper understanding of individuals and then use AI to help and guide that individual. So you can think about that in this kind of a process. The AI really needs to understand, gain a deep understanding of each individual. You probably heard about the Cicero kind of said 2,000 years ago, if you want to persuade me, you have to feel my feelings and think my thoughts and speak my words, right? So that's where you're talking about empathy. If you look up the dictionary, look at the word, what empathy really means, it is basically the machine needs to feel, needs to think what the person is thinking, feel what the person is feeling. And because of this one, that we believe the machines can better help people, especially at an individual level, because every individual is very unique. It's very different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And tell us a little bit about exactly what Juji does within this
Okay.
context.
Okay. So we call ourselves, it is, we enable organizations, for example, educational institutes, healthcare organizations, to create their, what do we call it, a cognitive AI assistants. So what I mean cognitive AI means it is those AI assistants, not only do they have language skills, because right now everybody understands large language models, ChatGPT, they're very powerful. But those AI agents also have this, we call it advanced human cognitive skills, and especially the way they can read between the lines
Mm-hmm.
and also read people. That's where empathy actually will come from.
And how do we, the big question I get when I'm out speaking is the fear that it's only as good as the people coding the systems or the inputs going in. And, we've seen there's so much opportunity with AI, but we're also seeing some of the flaws in terms of the biases that we have within content and within society. It's drawing from that content base. And so it's coming out in AI. So how do we encode that empathy and that ability to sort of think on the spot as you're interacting with someone and being able to read someone's tone, someone's, understand someone's experience? What are some ways that companies like yours are dealing with that challenge?
Thank you for asking this question, because there's often what I call it, either misconception or a confusion about, especially as I said, like generative AI, large language models, and versus the machine's cognitive ability, right? So let me just give you an example. Oh, thinking about it, I want to take a step back as well. So in order to really to be empathetic, as I said earlier, according to the definition of the empathy, which means this, you really have to understand this person, right?
Right.
Understand how they think, understand their passions and interests, and understand how they feel about things. Everybody, even with the exactly same situation, you and I are very different. So you may feel different than how I felt, right? So which means it is from a psychology point of view, there's called the individual differences. Large language models, the generative AI, it's actually not trying to understand individual differences. They're trying to understand the common patterns and structures in the public data. So it's completely opposite to the methodology, the approaches to understand individuals. So what the Juji has done is quite different. So we call it also computational psychology. So it's like a psychologist. So remember what psychologists will do. So you speak with the psychologist will observe, will trying to analyze your behavior. and trying to infer who you are really as a unique individual. So that's why we call it cognitive AI. In our term, it is trying to use machines to analyze the individual differences instead of a common patterns, right? And then from there, we're trying to, that's why I call it computational psychology. So given the user behavior, we're trying to infer, the machine is trying to infer, so what's the unique about this person versus another person? It's about the personality analytics. It's about the psychographics analytics. You must get to that level in order to let machines to feel who this person it is, how this person might feel, right? So just give a very simple example. Let's say in a very loud, crowded parade or disco scene, an introvert person will feel very anxious and very uncomfortable. But the extrovert social person might feel very excited, completely kind of their emotional kind of very high in terms, right? So that's why you can see with the same situation, different people may feel very differently.
Right.
So the machine's empathy really needs to come from it's under their understanding, their deep understanding of the psychographic characteristics of each individual. And many people may not even realize that. So they thought they'll just analyze the text that we understand. Actually, there's a line of the research called the psycholinguistics. Psycholinguistics shows that people's communication behavior indicates a lot of their characteristics, but not actually from a content. It's from those very mundane things. Large language models probably sometimes don't even care, like how they use articles, how they use pronouns, how they use the structure, for example, passive tense versus a very active tense, right? So it's very different than what large language models are trying to do, which is it's almost opposite. But of course, the two can come together to make an AI assistant much more powerful.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that many of the models people are exposed to now are these models that are analyzing commonalities.
Yes.
And you are taking things a step further with cognitive AI to actually train the systems to look at differences.
Absolutely.
Would that be a way to encapsulate that?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
absolutely.
fascinating.
Individual differences. So for example, if you have your own way of communicating, I have my own way of communicating. So if you use our machine to analyze your communication behavior versus my communication behavior, it would shows that it's almost like your, what do you call it? Like it's not your biological DNA, but rather than your psychological DNA to show that, wow, Maria, maybe Michelle, they sharing, they both are very open-minded. They like to they like to basically embrace new technologies, new solutions. But on the other side, they're very different. How you handle social relationships, how I handle social relationships, how you handle life's challenges, like a pressure, how I handle life challenges, the pressure might be very different, right?
Right.
It's really trying to understand the individual differences, the unique characteristics in each individual. Only to that level, the machines can be empathetic. Otherwise, how could they?
Right.
Right?
Right. And so where is that unbiased way of looking at those individual differences coming from? Again, is it ever impacted by the people programming the machines or giving it the input to infer these differences in people? Where is it coming from?
Very, very, very good question. It's a great question as well. So actually, it's training. Of course, we still need training data, right? That's why this area of research maybe hasn't caught so much attention as the large language models because of the data scarcity. So it needs to come from individuals. So that's why we have to collect the data. Of course, people have to opt in, right? Individuals' data. For example, let's say we have the interview of you with another person, then that's your data. And then I have an interview with you, that's my data. But like this formal interview, it's not even a great quality of data because I have to talk about technology, but the conversations, let's say with the informal, like for example, I have a very, very authentic, a very open conversation with my AI. That kind of data would be the best to illustrate this person's
Mm-hmm.
characteristics, because in those moments I'm most relaxed.
Yeah.
I'm really true to myself, right? So that's why we spend a lot of time. We collaborate with universities to figure out what will be the great data to collect.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be very authentic. I want to be very actually helpful to
Mm-hmm.
actually capture the real characteristics of the individuals. So
I
that's why
love
you see it's not the public data. So be
no.
very, so then you're not, so we have done, so this, for example, this year, a university study, it's a 5 university study led by the Auburn University. They have collected data for almost 3 years and trying to figure out and basically using our machine techniques to infer the individual differences. And then they
Mm-hmm.
want to know how those individual differences actually associated with the people's real world behavior. So real world behavior, including their GPA score. That's a real world behavior, right? Second one, real world behavior is the third party's evaluation of those folks. So
Mm-hmm.
they have to kind of use this to validate it, whether our inferred individual differences had any impact. Because the traditional research said that individual differences do impact the real world behavior. Study results were amazing. So they showed that actually our AI chatbot inferred personality traits can predict those people's real world behavior either on par or better than the traditional assessments. Because psychology has many, many traditional assessments.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you too is validating something I read in an article or saw somewhere where they were talking about we need to not fear AI because otherwise we're only going to get a certain type of person
Mm-hmm.
interacting with the AI and providing the inputs.
Yeah.
And so it was in response to, well, will bad actors use AI? And it's like, yeah, if only bad actors are involved with populating the learning that the AI needs. And so the more of us that get involved with helping to, maybe I'm not using the terminology the right way, but the more of us that interact with AI and populate with AI, the more that AI is going to be smarter about understanding these individual differences versus just a certain type of person that would interact with AI.
Actually, you said it very well. So yesterday I was talking to a person from a university about that. So their concerns about AI inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
whether they could actually help the people in the whole world, not just a certain population, right? We had this very similar conversation. It is in order for AI to be inclusive, then we need more people to be there. It's almost like in the real world when you're talking about like voting, right? So if the only one population voting, they were voting for the people in that one. But if there are more people participated, then you would have more diversity. You would have more candidates probably represent the different population, right? So it's a very, very similar idea in AI as well. So like, for example, in psychology, most of the time they're using students. So then maybe in our current sense, would be for younger people, students would be great. And now we also want to working with the healthcare organizations who are actually doing elderly care. Then we have more data from there. Then the AI would be trained, it would be even better to cater to the serve to the elderly. You're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. So the more involvement from a human side, the more inclusive AI can be.
I love that. I mean, and as an author, this is something a lot of authors are concerned about is like, are people going to pull our work and claim it for themselves? And a part of me reacted very viscerally to that of like, no, I don't want my information being used and cited without me. But then there was a part of me that said, no, but I want my information out there as part of the inputs to these algorithms because I know and I trust and I have validated the content that I've created. So do I really care if someone doesn't know that I wrote that particular paragraph? People are still going to buy my books, but it's sort of like the greater good type of
Yeah,
situation.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think but you do kind of like also imply another side of it's a double-edged sword, right? So we have been very careful. So first of all, opt-in is absolutely essential to ask people to get their consent, right? So we always ask people, okay, this, for example, in especially university, they always have an IRB approval process, which means it is the research board has to approve that particular even study. So in this case, people know that what they're getting into, how their data will be used, how this data can be potentially even to help them, right? So it's almost like what you said, it is if the person doesn't doesn't actually express their needs, express their characteristics, then the machines would not know, right? So the machines would only serve the best for the people who are there, who showed up, right? So in this case, it is, of course, we want to also protect privacy, and we also protect the personal data. So in other cases, mostly ours is anonymous, right? Anonymous, because in this case, so that's why we encourage more and more people to involved in this kind of studies to get their opinion, to get their side of the story into the system. But in the meantime, it's still anonymous. We're still not going to reveal your identity, reveal your actually dark secrets in any way, right? So that's so it's a double-edged sword. But I think if people knew about that, they can potentially help them. So just a very simple example, we have started working with also financial and healthcare institutes, right? So thinking about it is financial literacy. It's very important for people in their, especially in their probably lifetime, right? But many people, like we were even talking about, even myself, sometimes we feel like we're financially illiterate. We don't know a lot about. But if we just hide that shortcoming from the machines, we will never able to get the kind of help we want. So we want to know what kind of a financial illiteracy exists. So the machines, maybe in this case, the humans can inject the knowledge and help. And having said this one, in terms of the inclusion, AI equality side of it, is also important. I want to stress is that in past, especially past maybe 10 years, but these few years since have been changed, and we're trying to change that too. So AI always considered almost like probably early days, maybe when the cars, computers are were just invented. Only the people who are privileged can afford, right? So of course, when they have the wealth, they can enjoy the first car, the first computer, the first TV. So what we're trying to do here is also to democratize the technology so they can reach as wide a population as possible. How can we do that? So for example, in the past, when you wanted to create an AI assistant, right? So companies literally have to spend millions of dollars. They have to hire companies like the big tech companies like IBM, Microsoft, to help them to build that, right? To customize it to their solutions. And the small businesses, let alone individuals, can afford any of them. So right now, one of the really biggest efforts is to democratize that. So we want to make the creation of the custom AI assistant, it's as simple as somebody can use PowerPoint, as simple as somebody can use spreadsheet. In this case, they could have the control. Again, this is another inclusion in terms of, so yesterday, again, I was telling a story, girl, I think she's a teenager girl, and I was looking at one of the comments she was writing. So she actually was very introverted. She also felt like she's not a very great fit with her, the same age girls or students in her class. So she was able to use our technique, our platform, to create herself as an AI. And so she can talk to. And that gives her so much confidence. She says, AI could be also like me. But you know what? Now I have an AI friend. It was very touching. So I was looking at the comments she wrote. It is, so she felt, oh, actually, it's okay to be. So actually, she was talking to herself, right? It's okay to be introvert. It's okay to be not extra popular or social or something. So it's very, the reason she could do this one is because the tool is there. And she doesn't need to hire, she couldn't probably afford a group of engineers to help her create her, right? So that's what we are really striving at, enabling. That's why our company's mission is we want to enable the creation, the best human AI teaming and make it accessible to everyone. So that's about it. So people talking about inclusion, empathy, and really the humans have been in the loop. Doesn't matter whether on the recipient side, the users of AI, or the creators, the designers, we call it supervisors of AI. They all should have a say into it.
So what kind of companies are coming to you? Does it range from all kinds that offer customer service and employee engagement? And I mean, does it range across industries? What are you seeing? Who are the ones that are really pursuing it?
Right. So let's going back to the topic of today's podcast, the empathy, right? So the companies who are reaching out to us or have reached out to us, the organizations who deeply care about their audience, educational institutes, they care about their students, prospective students, as well as existing students. Thinking about the prospect students, this is I would say empathy at its best use, I would say, right? Machine empathy at its best use. Thinking about the students who came from a family who have never had anybody has gone to college. Thinking about the students who are first generation immigrant, maybe even have a language problems, language issues. They want to get a higher education and they want to acquire a new skill, right? They cannot afford to hire a career counselor for $20,000, $50,000, right? So they go to this university online. Those universities will use our AI assistant sitting there 24/7. Remember, those people have to work during the daytime as well, right? They have a full-time job, but they're thinking about advancing their career. So these programs, these universities will hire in this way, hire our AI assistant and sitting there to really try to understand their prospect students' needs and wants, and even help them to find out what might be best suitable for them. That's what I call empathy. If they don't understand what those people's needs and wants, how would they recommend a program? So I was looking at some of the transcript. Some people were saying this one is, I love my family. I really enjoy taking care of them, right? So I'm trying to find a program. So then the AI would ask them, could you tell me more about yourself? Because we need a certain amount of data to make a recommendation. So I was looking at the recommendation made for this particular person. It's about nursing degrees, maybe counseling job. So it's really matching with this person's, I would say, unique characteristics, being very compassionate, being caring. You see how they're treating their families, right? So then there are other type of people who might be very thoughtful, maybe introverted. So then they will recommend something slightly different programs. So basically, it's about the fit. I mean, education is expensive. It's not cheap. It's a big investment for the folks who want to get a higher education degree or maybe a new skill. So this is we're talking about empathy. Of course, for student retention, same thing. Students, they have a full-time job. They had under pressure, and how can use AI assistant to check in on them to help them, right? So that's when same thing applied to healthcare. That's another probably you heard about the most is about how can be empathetic to patient. You really have to understand the patient's pains, not just the physical pains, mental pressure as well, right? Because if they are not well and they're thinking about how I'm going to pay for my family and how fast I can recover. So there are lots of things there. So this, and then we're starting to see the financial company came to us is very similar. People are in maybe financial trouble. Maybe people want to get out of financial trouble, right? Again, they cannot hire. I mean, the more I spoke with the potential clients or existing clients, the more I felt like this world, it's so large, it's so different. Not everyone is privileged, right? There's many people actually are not privileged.
Most of them are not.
Most of
Right.
them not.
Exactly.
They cannot hire me, including ourselves too, right? I don't have a financial analyst. I don't have a financial advisor to advise me how should I save money for my retirement or something like that. So we really see this empathy needs to be instilled into the machines. The machines can help the people as we have expected them to do that.
And what I love about this goes beyond, in my work as a brand strategist and creating connections with customers and with prospects, the very, image that people have of chatbots, which is, oh, it has a limited amount of pre-canned responses and it's going to give me what it thinks I need. And sometimes that actually makes you as a customer, especially if you're already upset, getting the canned responses makes you even more upset because you know it's a canned response, right? And I've gotten that with like email responses or chatbots where I'm like, you're clearly a chatbot, like you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
And so I love this approach of actually there's a time and a place for that, but then there's a time and a place to really get AI to be able to react to the specific person or situation or what they're specifically typing or saying. I guess my naive question is obviously that's a lot harder to program,
Yeah.
right? And so what does that time horizon look like? Is that a really long time? Is it obvious? It's obviously something that gets better with every interaction, but what are we looking at here in terms of like the difference between investment and timing of getting a system to be that responsive to someone?
Actually, the time is now. So our customers have been using that
Mm-hmm.
already for their
Mm-hmm.
one. It's just that, so that's why when I talk to our potential client, existing clients, it's always about use cases, right?
Right.
So most of the people think about the chatbot AI assistants always in the context of customer services.
Mm-hmm.
Customer services, in my opinion, is one of the worst use cases for AI assistants. You know why? Because the people are already very upset, and also they normally need urgent help. Have you seen a person who wants to call customer services because they just want to say hello, or they just
Right.
want to do kind of a chit chat, right? Maybe they have people like that, but very few, right?
Right.
So that's why what we our AI assistants are best used. So far, we have seen as well, right? I wouldn't call them customer service per se. Always like in a situation to help people to make a very high value, high stakes decisions, like what I'm talking about in education or maybe even healthcare, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say education, I want to get a degree. I
Yeah.
don't have a degree. I had just a maybe high school degree. I found that it's very extremely hard, difficult for me to find another job. But I have no idea because none of my family members has ever had a college degree. So
Right.
I want to help. But because of this one, do you remember? You also see from a psychology point of view, people also has this what are called the social desirability biases.
Mm-hmm.
They actually may not be willing to talk to a human counselor because they felt like I'm inferior.
Mm-hmm.
I feel uncomfortable because I'm exploring. When
Mm-hmm.
this exploring stage, AI seriously would be the one of the best approaches. You know what? First one, AI doesn't judge. AI doesn't really care if you had a degree, you don't have a degree, what kind of family you come. Does its best at trying to understand what your needs are and provide that kind of help. This
Mm-hmm.
is where empathy also shows up very a lot. Trying to
Mm-hmm.
ask, say, tell me about yourself. So what are your and what are your hobbies? So through those very common informal conversation, AI gathers data to really
Mm-hmm.
understand who this person it is, then can make a recommendation,
Mm-hmm.
can make a suggestion. So that's the best, right? Similarly in healthcare, let's say if somebody who's maybe grandparents or maybe parents, maybe this person suspect this person has a little bit maybe Alzheimer disease or Parkinson's disease,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't have enough evidence because those people are not the doctors and physicians themselves, right? But they want to just investigate a little bit. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to talk to a medical doctor yet. First one is cost prohibited. Another one it is maybe it's not ready yet. They're not ready yet, right? So those
Right.
cases, if they go to the website of the healthcare organization, they want to get as much information as possible. So in this case, the AI really should chime in to be empathetic at this point, to be have that empathy. Ask, so what's your goal? So what
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to find this information. When we ever to go to the website, has ever you seen they want to know about your goal? Their goal is to marketing to you. So I wanted the AI to serve as the interactive medium there to ask what I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I
Mm-hmm.
go to the website, you go to the website, especially if let's say you say you're author, you sell books. If I want to inquire about your book, maybe for my purpose, you never know. Maybe the reason for me to buy your book it is because I felt like there's a value in your book. I wanted to recommend to somebody
Mm-hmm.
versus I want to read it, certain chapters in a book. They're totally different
Mm-hmm.
reasons. But I haven't ever seen the static medium like a website can do that because they
Right.
can't have only one version. But
Right.
the great thing about the interactive medium like the AI assistant, it can do that. Not
Mhm.
only it can do the understand the user's goal, understand this one, it can actually deliver the information in a best possible way, tailored to the person's needs. That's what I call empathy too. So we
Right.
are actually talking about, I just published an article in the university business talking about the AI tutor, your own learning amigo, right? So think
Mhm.
about it. Oh, I was talking to the teacher, which is very funny. So when you talk about geometry problem, first one, math is already the hard problem for most of the people. Then they were talking about the geometry problem using examples in construction. Thinking about
Mhm.
how many people are familiar with construction examples, right? Containers, the walls. So it's just adding an extra layer of anxiety. So I was
Mhm.
talking to the teacher who has been teaching math for, she was telling me 40 years. I was asking her, hey, would it be interesting? Would it be using helpful for students? Let's say we use examples the students are most passionate about. So let's say
Mhm.
for a boy, for a girl who very interested in playing soccer or baseball, let's
Right.
use examples they're familiar with.
Right.
Would it be, I would say, will be relieved that the anxiety at first. So I just said, let's talking about something you here. But the problems right now, it is for the textbooks, for the one, it's impossible to have millions of versions for millions of students.
Of course.
Yeah, but now we have AI. We can really do that by
Right.
understanding a person's passions and interests, especially how they learn and what their cognitive style it is. Some people are very emotional. Some people are very example based. Hey,
Right.
we can really tailor that content to the person individually. That's why I
Well,
call it empathy at scale, right?
it is at scale. And
Yeah.
it's, like I'm laughing at your math example because I have a 9-year-old, and if they only would use examples from Pokemon, that would be amazing. Like he'd be into it, right?
Right.
So as we wrap up, I just want to ask you this last question, and I have a perspective. I would like to hear your perspective from the world of AI. Is, do you think the need for empathy is going away because of AI?
No, actually, it's more even. Not only it won't go away, actually it needs more because we have to teach AI more about empathy and from a human side of it, right?
Hmm. Yeah, we have to figure it out ourselves before we can teach it to a system. And also, my perspective is also, when we are automating a lot of things and being able to customize, that skill of empathy that we can have from a human to human perspective is going to be even more valuable, because we will have the machines taking care of the things that sort of, quote unquote, anyone can do at the lowest levels.
Mhm.
But then, like you said, we also need to build our empathy so that when we're encoding these systems and teaching these systems and providing content and data for these systems, we are we're teaching what we know, in other words.
One word of caution, the machine empathy versus the human empathy might be different. So this is how. So from an empathy point of view, people often again confuses the two concepts. One concept is that people really feel what I feel. Number one, this is
Yeah.
called empathy.
Yeah.
Second type
Cognitive
of
empathy,
empathy,
or
probably I saw this,
affective empathy. Yeah.
yeah, cognitive
Mhm.
empathy. So second part of empathy, maybe it is act upon the empathy, which is very different, right?
Mhm.
So somebody, maybe I can feel what you feel, but you know what? I'm not going to act on it,
Right.
right? That's very different. So what my vision it is for machines, it is because machines are machines. They're electronic parts, right? I
Mhm.
mean, maybe in the future they maybe will made it like using human tissue. I don't know, human synthetic tissue, something like that. But I think what's important for machines it is not necessarily to let them to really feel, right, from the material point of view, but we want them to act as if they felt, which
Mhm.
is advantage. You know why it's advantage? Have you heard about like a first responders, the policemen, and also the nurses, healthcare professionals? They got burned out.
Mhm.
They got burned out. It's because they're humans. They
Mhm.
have emotions. When they feel other people feel, they feel the pain, they feel the one. They also had the burden. We call it emotional burden on
Mhm.
themselves. But the advantage of machines is we can teach them how people feel, ask machines to act as if they actually feel what. That's the difference.
Mhm.
That's why actually we want to teach machines to act upon it, the behavior as you feel it. That's actually very difficult of humans to do. You know why? Because humans has these emotional burdens. They can't take anymore.
Right.
Machines don't have that.
That is such an important point, because I've often talked about the different types of empathy, cognitive empathy and affective or emotional empathy. But both of those are great. But if you don't do anything with that information, it's kind of a wasted, in my mind, it's a wasted connection. It's a wasted emotion.
Right.
Compassion is empathy in action. Now that I have the information about you, what am I going to do next? Am I going to, be silent and let you talk? Am I going to communicate in a different way than I was going to before? And this is why we talk about, especially in the business context, you can still be empathetic and make tough decisions, but your empathy enables you to take the action on the tough decision in maybe a different way than you would have if it was just like, oh, by the way, 500 of you, we're laying you off today. Good luck. Go pick up your last checks. Right. You can still lay people off as an example, but you can do it with empathy. You can do it by understanding where they're coming from. What do they need? How do you need to communicate the decision you're making? And I love that is such a new little nugget for me that you just shared of the power AI and making sure we do teach it, quote unquote, empathy, because it'll never quit. It's sort of, it won't suffer from empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue.
Right.
It can just keep going and be there when we as humans really need it to.
Absolutely. You said so well about the compassion, right? So which means it is that requires human teaching, because machines don't have the knowledge. So that's why I said it is we work so hard to want the domain experts to teach machines. We don't want just IT people to teach machines. That doesn't make sense, right? Because the domain experts, like you said, the counselors, the human advisors, they really knew how to act upon the empathy. That action part of it, we want them to teach machines. That's why it becomes more important, democratizing the tool. We keep saying that. So you cannot just say, okay, IT people go set it up. It's not going to happen. That's not going to work. We really want the domain experts in the loop of creating AI.
Right. Oh my gosh. This is so great. This is so great. Thank you, Michelle, for all of these insights, and what a wonderful conversation. Like I say, with many of my guests, I could probably talk to you for another 45 minutes, but we're going to wrap up. So I will have all your links in the show notes for folks to learn more about you and learn more about Juji. But for folks that are on the go, where's one of the best places they can go to find out more about you and your work?
Oh, juji.io.
Okay, juji.io.
Right.
Yes.
You can find us.
Wonderful.
And also you can go LinkedIn to find us, juji.io as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle, for your time today.
Thank you, Maria. Bye. Yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate or review or share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, always remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.